Do you have autism and want to improve on your social skills and learn how to start a conversation better? And do you feel like starting a conversation is really tough? Well, join the club. Here's some tips that can help you start a conversation that I found really helpful that I use as a reminder to refresh the whole process of starting a conversation, which for some reason seems just so natural for other people, but we need the extra help to do that. All right, so the first thing to do is when you start a conversation, know that you're in it together. I know it's easy to get caught up in the fact having trouble socializing. You can kind of forget that the other person matters too. And it's good to think about what the other person wants to talk about, what they're interested in. And when they have something to say, think about what the other person has to say. And also to know that even though autistic people have a really hard time socializing, everybody does to a certain extent. It could be hard for anyone. For example, if you're at a party, just simply say, these parties are always so awkward, aren't they? Everyone is supposed to network, no pressure. That'll always make the person laugh. Another thing you do is notice something nice, like a necklace or shirt that looks nice as a conversation starter. I know this sounds kind of cheesy and fake, but believe me, it really does help get a conversation started. Another thing you can do is pay a compliment, like tell the person they did an awesome job on the presentation or their shirt looks nice. Another thing you can do is ask for an opinion. It's important to keep the topic relevant. You don't want to just walk up to a random person and ask them what they think about Donald Trump, or it's good to keep it relevant. Like if you're in an event, ask opinion on the event. Another thing you can do is offer help. If someone looks lost, give them an opportunity for the person to help them. And like ask them if they want directions somewhere, and that could start a conversation. Another thing you can do is look for common ground. I know this seems completely obvious, but it's common for people with autism to just flat out forget that. So it's good to kind of remind yourself, like if you're at an event, tell them like, yeah, what did you think about this event? Or when did you attend school here? Or how long have you been in this business? Things like that. Another thing you can do is ask for help. You'd be surprised how many people who are good at socializing just not even think about it, they just ask for help and they then start talking. So that's one to always kind of remind yourself. Asking for help may seem kind of selfish or you may not want to be a burden, but believe me, people are more than happy to ask for help, and it's a great way to start conversations. So these are some ways that can help you with start conversations. How do you keep a conversation going? If you struggle with socializing and you want to know how to keep a conversation going after you start a conversation and you worry about it dying out, well, here's some tips to keep the conversation going, and this can increase your chances of making connections and friends. The first thing you can do is ask open-ended questions. It's easy to say, how are you doing? How do you like the weather? Or other kind of questions that usually have a yes or no answer. However, if you ask questions that require more of an explanation, those are open-ended questions, and that will help keep a conversation going instead of stalling out. Another thing you can do is ask for follow-up questions. People love when you ask questions. Not only it's great to ask open-ended questions, but it's good to ask more questions that follow up on their answers to dig deeper in the conversation. However, it's important to not ask too many questions in a row. It's good to have a balance between asking questions and then sharing your own personal insights. Another thing to do is be genuinely interested in the conversation. I know you're interested in creating more connections, making more friends, or networking with possible job opportunities, but it's even more important to be genuinely interested in what you're talking about, because if you're not, that can cause problems in the conversation and make it stall out. Another thing to do is find common interests to talk about. Look for something that you're both interested in talking about. Another thing you can do is use eye contact and make sure your face is faced towards the other person when you're talking. I know people with autism might struggle with eye contact, and that's all right. If you really have a hard time with eye contact, the first thing you can do is just look at their nose. Another thing you can do if that's a struggle is just be honest. Let the person know that you have autism and you struggle with eye contact. Another thing you can do is use the Ford rule, which stands for family, occupation, and dreams. So talk about family first, then occupation, and then dreams. Another thing you can do is just avoid coming on too strong. I know you might be really interested in making friends, and socializing may be important, even though it might be a challenge. but try not to come on too strong. Try not to look desperate when making friends, because that can make people feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, don't be standoffish either. It's a balance. Another tip that's important is to return to previous topics that you're both really interested in. That can help build a relationship even stronger. And then another thing that's really good is ask for advice. There'll be times though people will talk about things that you not know much about. It's really good to just act like you're a student who wants to learn about it. That will make the person interested and want to talk about it. Plus you'll learn something new. And then another thing that's really helpful is prepare for topics in advance. That way it can prepare you to talk about things in advance. And then finally, learn to accept silence. There'll be times where you might not talk about anything. Learn to not let that kind of freak you out, even though it can be kind of uncomfortable. It's usually not a bad thing. There's times where it's good to have silence, and it's good to learn to accept that. Look at it not as a bad thing. I want to talk about some tips on how to end a conversation when you're socializing with someone. Well, right off the bat, it isn't something that's really complicated. It's not like writing a conclusion on a paper where you're trying to get graded. All you gotta say is, hey, it was great talking to you. Well, I need to get going now, but let's catch up again soon. Or you can say, well, it was great talking to you. Let's get together again sometime soon. Or let's talk on the phone. Here's my phone number. It was great talking to you. It's really that simple. Another thing to keep in mind when ending conversations, you might find some people might keep talking and you gotta go somewhere. However, here's a really simple way to get yourself out of people who are talking. You can't get a word edgewise to get yourself out of the conversation. This is what to do then. Check your watch or check your phone and then say, hey, I'm running a little late, but it was great talking to you. Let's catch up soon. Well, I hope this is helpful.